In previous episodes of my 6 days with Yiannis Kouros, I talked about mainly the first couple days and, of course, my travel to the race. So the first couple days, day one, of course, Joe and Yiannis were just flying around, probably doing about 2 laps to my 1 lap. And that's kind of what ended up happening. I got 68 miles there, basically 135 miles. Day 2, they definitely slowed down a bit, but Kouros still really hadn't taken a break. I had a terrible day 2 where I was just foolish, got all chafed up and just kind of burnt out, and was really not thinking 300 was going to be possible. Then I had a good conversation with Jamel Curry, who said, hey, it's just like a multi-day hike, and day 2 is always the toughest. And day 3 dawned. One of the things I did do was I'd heard there were showers, nice hot showers, and I thought I can't pass up this opportunity. I'm at the Dodger training facility. Always a big time baseball player when I was a kid. In fact, that's how I got into running. Was I got tired of sitting on the bench in baseball, so I definitely had to check them out. The only problem was the shower was like a quarter mile away from the start finish line, which meant I was going to get to do an extra half mile. So the showers open around 9 o'clock. So you'd grab all your stuff, make sure you were doing a lap, then walk over there. Got in there, and it was professional big-time baseball, at least what I've seen on TV. And I remember the shower heads being like 10 foot off the ground. There was some nice hot water, great facility. Took a nice shower, changed clothes, and then went back out. And then, like mostly what I did during the daytime, I just did laps, watched all the new people, the new 24-hour people and 48-hour people fly around. And I would just save my energy because at night I knew I could move. The field wouldn't be as many people, and it got cold, so you had to move just to stay warm. And I was now, when I was sleeping, I was actually sometimes trying to take naps during the daytime. I would just lay in the grass because it's warm in Phoenix in the day, just like Bakersfield. We'll get in the 60s in the day, and then at night, it got really cold. And also what was going on then was during the daytime, Kouros, I would see him running most of the time, but then at night he would slow down. Joe was taking breaks periodically, but Kouros was just doing what I was doing, just out there for lots and lots of hours, 22 hours a day or something crazy like that. So a lot of times I'd find myself with him and Bill Hildebrandt, little Bill, and a bunch of other people, especially late at night. There wouldn't be a lot of people out there, so you kind of team up just to have some company. And I often found myself with Kouros because by now he really wasn't running at night, especially he was walking, just trying to put the miles in, and I would stay around with him. And then it was kind of interesting a couple times, and I don't remember the dates, but it would be interesting. We'd be finishing up a morning, and at 9 o'clock there'd be a new race, and we'd always be heading towards the people. You switch directions every 4 hours. And I remember a couple mornings where I'd be with Kouros, and it would be almost 9 o'clock, and I would warn him, going, hey, in a minute everybody's going to come running towards us, and be like, oh, okay. He didn't speak English well, but I knew he understood English. I didn't really talk to him too much, but it was interesting. And so I would kind of sometimes, since I'm a big guy, 250, and Kouros is a pretty small guy, I would kind of stay by him when the whole herd of new people would come flying out on every 24-hour race. And I think he appreciated getting a heads up because I don't think he really, was paying attention to the specifics of the race. I ended up day 3 with 158 miles. Was a little bit concerned. Was it 158? Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah, 158 miles. A little bit concerned I was going to get my 300, but I was taking care of myself. The chafing issue was gone. I was putting in the miles. My feet hurt pretty bad. At this time, I wasn't wearing ultras. I was still doing the Hokas, and I had the big, thick Hokas. And, it just was like doing whatever I could just to keep moving, and was keeping to my pattern of late nights putting in the miles. And I noticed like late at night, Kouros would be out there, I'm talking like 2, 3 in the morning. And I would just kind of stay with him or whoever happened to be out there. But Kouros was actually falling asleep on his feet. And what was really interesting, he had the heart of the champion. He would cut the tangents like a Formula One race car, but he couldn't walk in a straight line. And there would be often times where he would just be weaving around, and I would just kind of be around him. And there were a couple times where I actually had to yell at him because one time there's this one turn, he went the wrong way. Another time he almost walked down into the lake, and he definitely wanted to beat Joe, but he just spent so much time out there. And he was 57, and I get it. I'm 57 now, the same age, and there's a big difference between being in your 40s and being in your 50s. Probably on the 4th night or the 5th night, I probably was actually the 4th night. I realized like I was spending, walking with Kouros and around him. And I kind of realized, like, I got to know Joe better, and, it was a big battle. And I kind of, like, dawned on me, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be out here with Kouros because you're kind of keeping him on track. And, I'm, just kind of being nationalistic, I guess, but kind of like thinking, hey, I'm, American, and Joe's American, and, I like Joe. I don't really know Kouros, and maybe I shouldn't be, I wasn't pacing him, but I was, staying with him. And so I kind of thought, I need to just kind of go off on my own. So I was just doing stuff on my own. And then on the last night of the race, now I'm finally getting there, closer to getting to my goal of 300. And it's sometime on the last night, because I remember when I finished up, I had like 12 hours on the clock. So this has been around 9, 10 o'clock at night. Again, I was walking during the day, but at night I could run. I could do that little 12-minute, 5 miles an hour shuffle. And so, yeah, it was around 9 o'clock at night. And Kouros was out there with me, and there wasn't a lot of people as the race progresses, especially it starts like on December 28th and goes to January 3rd. The New Year's race is a lot of people, but the last couple of days, it's mainly just us 6 days and a handful of people from other races. And I remember like the last day of the race, the 6th day, I mean, there was only us and like one other person. And so what was really cool is, I got to run my mile 199 and 200 with Joe Fegis, and I just kind of happened to run into Kouros when I was completing mile 299. And so I, was running along with him, and I just said to him, because I said to him, I say, do you mind if I go, this is my 300th mile, do you mind if I do this lap with you? And he said, sure, just, stay behind, don't kick up the dust, because the dust was really bothering him. And he just said, yeah, sure. And so I ran, and I got to do my last mile, not my last mile, but mile 300 with Kouros. And as we were coming around and getting towards the starting area, we got to the start-finish line, and he's in the heat of a battle. He only got beat by 5 miles. And so many people were saying, he's always like, he's barking and yelling at his crew, and kind of everybody thought he was kind of being a jerk. Well, when we got to the start-finish line that clicked off my 300th mile, he actually stopped and shook my hand and congratulated me, and then he ran off. And to this day, I'll never forget that moment. It was just truly a special moment when I got to my goal of 300 miles, and I got to do my 300th mile with Yiannis Kouros, and he even stopped and congratulated me on getting there. It's pretty much my last real interaction with Yiannis. After that, he was still fighting and battling Joe. And I didn't really see him much after that last little mile with him. So now I finally got into my goal. I've done a 6-day race. I've done 300 miles, 50 miles a day. I'm celebrating with a big ice cold glass of milk. I don't drink, have never drank. It's interesting. I was just reading this article on Joe Fegis, and he drinks milk during races, not most of the time. And he was also commenting on the fact that William Scheifel, who does many multi-day races, also drinks milk. And I think it's a huge advantage. So I'm having my glass of milk. Friends of mine are texting me and congratulating me. The coverage was online where you could have kind of like live results, where people could see updating throughout the night and all the days. And later on, when I'd go to races, people would come up to me and say, oh, I'd get up in the middle of the night to take a leak, and I would hit refresh, see how Kouros and Joe were doing, and then check on you. And it was pretty cool. So I'm done. I'm just kind of sitting in the runner's tent. It's not a whole lot of people there. Pretty happy to have gotten 300. Not really sure what I'm going to do now. And then this older gentleman, Michael Allen, he was in his 70s. He reminded me of Tommy Lasorda, skinny Tommy Lasorda. And I guess he'd owned a lot of records back in the day. In fact, my friend the Jester beat his 6-day age group record. And he comes over, and and what I loved about him is he did the 6-day, and he probably, I don't know how many miles he got, but it was funny. He would come over every day. I mean, he would come every day and do miles, and he would wear a different colored sweatsuit every day. So he had like all red, all yellow, all green. Just a wonderful, lovely guy. And so he came up to me, and he's sitting down, and he talks to me. He's like, asking me, oh, how did your training go? What were you doing? In fact, here he is. He was 78 that year, and he did 142 miles. And I told him, I did do a 6-day on my own in Bakersfield. I got 211 miles. And he gets talking to me, and he goes, well, now what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I got 12 hours. My plane doesn't leave till tomorrow. I don't have anywhere to sleep. I don't have much, I'm pretty much, homeless. And he goes, well, come over here to the leaderboard. So he takes me, we go over to the big screen on the, and look at the leaderboard. and I'm in 10th. No, I'm in 11th place. And he says, look, he goes, you know, the guys that are in 9th and 10th, they're not here. They're at hotels or something. And 9th place was 314 miles. And I had 12 hours. And he's like, you know what? You could move into the top 10. So at this point, I'd finally got a blister. I had a big old blister on the ball of my right foot. I often say my right foot's my power foot, and I'd often get blisters on the ball of it. And I got them from wearing those Hokas. They were the bigger, wider ones. I think I was wearing the Stensons. You know, now that I've gotten ultras, I don't get those kind of blisters for the most part. So I had a blister on the ball of my foot. I was pretty tired, beat up, but I was like, hey, you know, I've been challenged to go for the top 10 position. I've got 12 hours. I can just go out and do a mile or two an hour and just knock this thing out, and hopefully those guys don't wake up, look at the results, and come out here, because it turned out that it was my friend Anthony Culpepper, who last summer became one of the less than 100 people to walk 100 miles in under 24 hours. And then there was Victor Vila, this little fast little marathoner guy from the Middle East, and he definitely would probably hunt me down. So I'm heading out, I'm doing the miles, and then I start to notice someone I noticed in the race earlier, and I had talked to her before, and she just walks like 3 miles an hour, never stops, takes a couple hours a night off, and it was Martina Hausman. Now, Martina is an ultra legend, especially in the multi-day racing, and I guess, you know, earlier in her career, probably I guess in the 80s or 90s, you know, she'd give the men a run for her money, and she raced against Kouros and all those guys. I'm looking here on Ultra Sign Up, and I mean, like in 1999, she did 428 miles across the years, and I think she probably did even more than that. But, you know, so I talked to her during the race. She always walked slower than me. I mean, I walked 16 to 18 minute miles. She just consistently walking like 1920s. I guess she'd had some injuries and she couldn't run at all. And I remember walking with her from time to time and talking to her. And very funny lady, real stern German type, but very, very funny. And I talked to her and I'd say, oh, you know, you don't run? No, I can't run. And so, you know, very competitive. She used to be the all-time mileage person across the years. I think John Giesler finally passed her, but they've had battles too. She always gets over 300 miles. And so she's coming at me, and she's just slowly getting closer and closer to me. And I'm like, man, I now moved into, I got to 314. I've moved into 9th place. She's in 10th place, and I know she wants to try and catch me. And so the only thing was I knew she's going to take breaks, and so every time she took a break, I would take a break. And I was just keeping like a mile or two lead in front of her, and this went on all night long. And thankfully, she did take quite a few breaks, so I didn't have to get too many miles. And, of course, she was pretty cagey, and she figured out the system at the place. She had the aid station jumping through hoops to help her out, and somehow she convinced the medical staff to be able to sleep in the nice warm medical tents in the nice beds. So while she was sleeping in one of those beds, I was sitting in the runner's tent by a heater, just keeping an eye on her to make sure if she got out on the course, I would get out on the course. So Across the Years ends at 9 a.m., and at 8 o'clock in the morning, she's out on the course, and she's getting close to me, but I've got like a lap lead. And so it's now like 8:30 in the morning. There's only half an hour to go. I've got a mile lead on her, and I'm thinking, okay, she's headed out for a lap. It takes her 20 minutes plus to do the laps. Maybe I'm done. I'm at 321 miles. I'm just like, I don't want to go around this course anymore. I've done 21 miles more than I ever wanted to do, but I really want to stay in 9th place. My friend Anthony, he came out. He'd been having some health issues. He didn't go out and do any more miles, I don't think. But the Victor Vila guy, of course, he showed up, and he was just flying around the course trying to catch us. He ended up doing not 314. So I'm sitting there on a chair hoping I don't have to do any more laps. And, of course, there's lots of people because it's the last hour. And, it's 8:30. I don't see her. 8:35. I don't see her. And then all of a sudden, coming around the corner, there's Martina. And it dawns on me like, oh, my gosh, I got to go do another lap. So I grabbed a couple cups of Mountain Dew, pounded the Mountain Dew, ran a little, got in front of her, and then just walked it in. And it ended up, I finished with a couple minutes on the clock, like at 8:55, and she finished a couple minutes behind me. And I ended up doing 3:22. She did 3:21. Kept my 9th place, but it was definitely a hard-earned 9th place, and I was a mess. So now I'm done with the race, went and take a shower, come back for the awards. I've got a flight flying out that afternoon. I haven't been on an airplane since 1981 when I won my first ever plane flight when I was running cross country. Oh, maybe, I guess I went to Europe in 86. I haven't been on a plane in like 20 years, and certainly not since 9/11. And so I'm like, wow, how am I going to get to the airport? I go to my tent that they'd given me, and it looked like a bomb had exploded there. Clothes and stuff were all over the place because I was just constantly changing clothes, throwing things in there, looking for stuff. And so it's a huge mess. I'm a mess, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know how I'm going to get on the plane. I don't know how I'm going to get to the airport. Thankfully, I had my friend Bob Davison, who's gone over 400 miles walking the races. His wife was there. She kind of helped me pack my stuff. I had to buy an extra bag from across the years. They sell the old stuff pretty cheap because to put stuff in there, I realized I had to carry a couple bags on the plane, and I don't, with 9/11, I'd never flown on a plane, and so I unfortunately was like, well, I know dirty clothes can get on a plane, so I stuffed all my dirty clothes in the plane in my bags, and now I'm gonna get to the airport. And fortunately, my good friend Terry, who did 200 miles, the lady that every time I'd come out of the tent or out of sleeping, I'd walk some laps with her, she gave me a ride to the airport. Now, the Phoenix airport is gigantic, and it's January 3rd or something like that. Well, anyways, they have all kinds of bowl games and stuff in Phoenix, Arizona, so the airport is a zoo. Big old lines. I've got a big old blister on my right foot. I can barely walk. I look a mess. I've been up for 6-7 days in a row. I've walked 322 miles, and I'm just a mess. And so, I'm at the security line. I can barely stay awake, and I'm limping funny, and I look like hell. And I'm thinking, I hope I can get through the security line. And I get to the front of the line finally. It's a big line, and I have my water bottle, and I actually carried this Nathan water bottle the entire race. I'm on a 1-mile loop. I don't know why I carried it. I'm carrying 20 ounces of water all this time. So I get to the front of the line, and they're like, sir, you can't bring that water bottle on the plane. And I'm looking at them like, you got to be kidding me. You need to throw it away. And I'm like, can't I dump the water somewhere? And they're like, no, you got to throw it away. And then I look at the guy, and I'm like, can I drink it? And he kind of goes, I guess. And so I went like this, and in one pull, I drank the whole thing. And I remember the lady behind me like, whoa. And then I had to show him see, I drank it. It's like, 'cause I didn't want to throw it away. It was like a $25, $30 bottle. So I go through the security. I pass security. Then I get there where you got to put your shoes back on and crap. And I pat my pockets. I got my car keys, and I got change in my pockets. I got all this metal shit on me. And then somehow I stagger, to the airport gate. And I get there. I'm at the airport 5 hours before we're supposed to be there. And I'm just so tired and sleepy. And I remember talking to it was this guy that was working the gate. It was Cedric the Entertainer. I told him, hey, I've been up for a long time. Can you please, make sure I don't miss my flight, if whenever, whatever happens. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. So I fall asleep, and when I wake up, there's nobody at my gate. Now, I haven't missed my flight, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I look around, and I find out that, oh my gosh, my flight's been moved. And it's now on the other side of the airport. And I'm now so bad off. I actually called up and got the little airport cart guys to come pick me up. And they ended up having to drive me to the other gate. And I remember getting there to the gate and going up to the young lady at the gate attendant or whatever and saying, hey, when you call up, the old people and stuff, can I go and get on the plane then? Because it's going to take me a long time to walk down the galleyway. And so, fortunately, I finally got on the plane. I still really hadn't slept. Thankfully, from Phoenix to Bakersfield, instead of being a 9-hour car ride, it's like an hour and a half drive. And I finally land in Bakersfield, California at, sometime in 9 o'clock at night. And my middle son, Nicholas, came to pick me up. Now, I've lived in Bakersfield for almost 30, 40 years. And so I know the streets and everything real well. And Nicholas comes to pick me up. And I remember we're driving, and everything just seems really weird because here I've been walking around for 6 days on this 1-mile path that's only 10 foot, 15 foot wide. My whole world was just like this tunnel. And I remember my son, we're driving down my home street. I live on this pretty good sized street, but it looked gigantic, like an aircraft landing zone. And I was just freaking out. I remember Nicholas just like, boy, Dad's really out of it. And then it was so amazing. I get home, you know, of course, my dogs, because now I've been gone for like 9 days. My dogs, my two chugs, Maddie and Mushu, are all excited to see me. And I remember like going into my living room, and my living room seemed gigantic. It seemed like I was in this gigantic gymnasium. Everything seemed really, really big. And I was definitely kind of crazy out of it. And, you know, I had this gigantic blister on my foot. I was a mess. And it was really interesting after that first 6-day race how long it took me to recover. I know I did a thing talking about Joe Fegis, and he talked about that race, you know, him and Kouros. You know, he beat Kouros by 5 miles, and he said it took him months to recover. And it definitely took me a couple weeks to get my sleep back. I was just like sleeping all day, all night, and my sleep was a mess. And I was definitely trashed and beat up from my first experience. But all in all, it was really great. Unfortunately, it's been my best 322s, the most I've ever done. I went back to across the years the following year and did the 48-hour, did like 137 miles and got third overall. I got fourth, but they disqualified Kelly Agnew. And then I went and it blew up. I tried to do 400. I tried to do 400 at the Dome, and I did try to do it at across the years, blew up. And Dome I did 270 somewhere or something like that. And then I went to across the years and quit after 4 days. And then the following year I did go back to cross years and get 315 because I needed 312 to get my 1,000-mile jacket in 4 years. Since then, my 6-day experiences, you know, somewhere in the 200s. In fact, of course, last year I went to the Dome. I paid for it and everything is things, but by the time I ended up going, I really wasn't into it. Watched my friends Yolanda and Anthony become centurions, 100 miles walking in under 24 hours, and I went home. I just did my little 6 days in the home. I'm not really sure if and when I'll ever do another 6-day. I know I can do 200 miles, is no big deal. And 300 is difficult, but I don't even know if I want to do 300 because you got to be out there, you know, a long, long time. I remember talking to people who are just trying to do 200 miles in 72 hours, and guys who are pretty good, guys who, you know, have finished Badwater and stuff like that, and they'll come up to me after a day or two and be like, Andy, you know, all I got to do is 100K a day, but all I'm doing is walking right now. So that's going to be 20-hour days. If I was running, it would take me, you know, 13, 14. I said, welcome to multi-day racing, you know, because the math looks easy on paper, but the math is simply brutal. So that was my 6 days with Yiannis Kouros, and thank you for listening and watching. And if you please subscribe to my video channel if possible. And as always, stay healthy, be boring, not epic.